Hey everyone, this is Kieran from MSK Physio. Today's exercise is looking at scapular elevation, or ability to shrug our shoulders up. This is, I suppose, a capacity that I wouldn't say necessarily gets overlooked a lot in rehab, but maybe more in the context that it doesn't really get strengthened or trained. It's usually something where people are thinking, I've got tight upper traps and I need to loosen them up and release them. And so let's just say that that's something that you've had to deal with and you found that it keeps coming back and it's not really resolving. Then maybe try some strengthening and see if that actually is maybe the side of the coin that you needed instead of stretching and relaxing. Sometimes a muscle is just weak, and a symptom of that is typically tightness. So if that sounds like you, then give this exercise a go. With elevation of the scap, we're thinking about primarily a couple muscles. We have the levator scapula and we have the upper traps. Now, those are the muscles that are going to coordinate together and elevate or lift your shoulder blades up. Now, depending on where your start position is, might change a little bit of what muscle gets biased the most, and that's just because the upper trap has a bias towards upward rotation and the levator scap has a bias towards downward rotation. And so that just means that their attachment points is that upper trap, which is more on this sort of outer end of the scapula up into the clavicle. And then you've got the levator scap, which is going to be a little bit more on the superior angle of the scap. And so together they lift or elevate, but on their own, along with some other muscles that they synergize with, there's going to be a rotation bias. Now, you know, the upward rotation versus downward rotation debate in terms of like getting up or getting down and the ratios involved there. There's some sort of window of acceptableness around what's sort of normal, but I use that term loosely. What's important is that can you get up and can you get down or reach down? And if you have those capacities, I wouldn't worry too much about the resting position of your shoulder blade, as long as it can be used dynamically in the things that you want to do. So, back to sort of what we were trying to get at in the introduction, this idea of constantly tight muscles up here. It's thinking about, okay, the attachment points of these muscles. So for our levator scap, we're looking at that superior angle of the scapula, and then we're coming up into C1 down through to C4, and that's on the posterior parts of these transverse processes. And so what that means is it has the ability to also act on the neck. Whereas with the upper trap, we're looking at its ability to also elevate the scap, upwardly rotate, and then it can also extend the head. It attaches up to the occiput here, and so it can extend the head on the neck, but then it also has attachments through this ligamentum nuchae, which is through the center of the spine here. So it's a very weak extensor of the spine, just because of its lever arm. But what it means is that levator scap probably has a bigger potential for acting on the total area, but, the upper trap, but the levator scap also can act on the neck. And keeping in mind that these things can antagonize each other. They can do tug of war because of this rotation aspect. So it's a lot of detail, and if that interests you, dive into it. But at the moment, I just want to see if you can lift up. And so a nice little quick test would be to go in front of the mirror and just lift your shoulders up and then pull them down. And by pulling down, I mean try and touch the ground with your fingertips and then pull up and go down. And just run through a few of those and just see if there's an asymmetry. See if one side looks a bit different. I'm not worried if one side's the high side or one side's the low side, because that could be high relative to that or that could be low relative to that. Just can you do the movement and can you demonstrate what would be your full flexibility? And then if you can do that with the weight of your arms, start adding a little bit of weight. And generally, if there's a bit of weakness in a range, adding weight will show the range loss a bit more, because when you've got the weakness, you have less range. So now I'm going to elevate my shoulders up and then come down. Now, because I want to shorten the ends that attach to the shoulder blade over here, and I want to get maximal shortening over here, I need to make sure that there's length through the back of my neck. And the reason being for that is it's hard to shorten a muscle at both ends that crosses many joints. So as I elevate or lift up my shoulder blade, I want to make sure that I stay chin tucked and long through here, just so I can get the most out of the shortening potential here. If I extend my neck and my head, then if I lift up, I can't get as high. That's as high as I can go. If I lengthen the back of my neck, now I've got all this other range. So it's not saying again that this is a bad thing. It's just that if you want to get the training potential of the elevation, we need to be in this position. And if you wanted to work on a neck extension component, then yeah, you could work into here, but you wouldn't really be leveraging from the arm. You would be needing to do a neck extension exercise, which we've got other videos for. So pretty simple, grab the weight and lift up. Now, because we're not really concerned about biasing necessarily right now the upper trap or the levator scap, because I'm just purely elevating, they're both working and they're both just helping me lift up, okay? If I wanted to bias the upper trap a little bit, I would need to add a little bit of upward rotation. Now that upward rotation starts to kick in when my arm's abductor comes sideways. Now that can just be the humerus. So my elbows could hang here. So if I get into this position, now I am in a little bit more abduction at the humerus. My arms are out here a bit, which means now the scapula is a little more upwardly rotated, which means the upper trap's going to be kicking in more. And we've got some EMG studies to back this up as well. If I come into here and lift up and then down. It's a little more coordination. You might have to see yourself in the mirror, and I'm probably not doing it perfectly because you've got to keep the elbow angle constant. If it's a bit tricky with the dumbbells, then what you want to do is grab a bar. And if I grab this bar over here, like this, might have to straddle a little bit, but we'll go for a stand. So if I was here, now that I'm wide, can you see that my arms are abducted a bit? And so if I'm in this position and I elevate, now I'm still in that kind of upwardly rotated position. I don't have to worry as much about the angle of the elbow. But this is a bit of a different leverage as far as I can't get my biceps assisting as much now. So just play around with what feels doable and comfortable, and it gives you maximum range. Because if you're not getting maximum range, then you need to deload. You need to make it easier, or you need to reduce the weight a little bit. So just keeping in mind that you might feel like, okay, I've got chronically tight upper traps, but keep in mind that where's the tightness? Now, if the tightness is here, right, but you're in this position, by nature of the muscle, you're gonna be shorter at this end of the muscle, at the head end, and longer down at the shoulder blade end. Now, if we can get into this position and teach these parts to be short, just like if you had this going on all day and it was being stretched and it's uncomfortable, the solution isn't actually to stretch it more, it's to shorten it and give it a break. And then how long can you hold that break position for? That's where you use the weights to build some capacity or build your battery back up. And now we've got some changes in the quality or tension of that muscle tissue. Not gonna happen overnight necessarily, but it's a positional thing, right? So just something to keep in mind. Just be conservative as always. These are regressed exercises, so start light. And you might just find that it helps out your upper trap sort of chronic tightness a little bit. And it just might help give a little more freedom to your shoulder blades and help some arm movement through its ranges. If you like this video, then please hit like below. Otherwise, to check out more of our content in the future, you can subscribe to our channel by clicking our logo over here. And to check out our latest video, click up here.